This is a very quick video just to look at some of the top 7 exam preparation and revision strategies for all year groups at DHFS. So first of all, it's very important to make sure you have everything that you need before you start preparing for an assessment or for even a final examination at GCSE, Key Stage 4 or A-level. So just make sure that you know what is being covered on each exam. So you obviously know what to revise for that exam, but also the format, the type of exam questions that you're going to get, how many marks are allocated, and so on. And also ask yourself the question: do I know all the topics that we have learnt over the course? Okay, so within that, there's also questions about: do we know what exam board we're doing? So at Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5, there are different exam boards for the same subject. So it's very important that we make sure we get revision guides from the right one, so we're covering the right topics. But we're also making sure that we are practicing the right exam questions as well. Each of these exam boards has a website which has past exam papers that you or your teachers can get hold of. And then finally, for this section, okay, make sure that you've got like a list of all the topics and types of exam question that you know will be on the exam paper, and then go through a simple activity of, well, what do I need to spend most of my revision doing? These are the areas that I'm less secure with. I might highlight in red in a list. Those aspects that are amber might be ones where I've got some confidence, but I still have a few things I can't yet remember. And green is perhaps things that you've already got stuck in your head, in your memory, and are not needed to focus much time on. The next aspect is to do with making sure you kind of plan your time. So whether you're revising or preparing for an assessment at the end of a topic, okay, in year 7, or you're revising for final examinations at 16 or 18 years of age, it's really important that you kind of plan your time. Make sure you're planning your time so that we have time to get everything covered, but also you're not kind of trying to cram it in last minute. That's not the best way of revising. Revising it actually most effectively needs you to have it over a gradual period of time in short bursts. So in terms of short bursts, a lot of the research is suggesting that in 20-minute bursts of revision with very short breaks in between is far better than doing hours and hours in one go, where you're just going to simply lose interest, lose engagement, lose focus, and it won't be very effective. So little short bursts or blitzes of revision are far better. And it's important to come back to the same subject and topic a few days later to see if it's stuck in your head. Part of learning and making things stick in our long-term memory is about us learning it, forgetting it, and then learning it again. Only once we've come across something 3 times is it likely to stay in your head. Sometimes it takes longer. I've just put on here a little web link, okay, to some digital revision timetable piece of software as well. So you don't have to kind of do these by hand. You can find PDFs that you can print off or make your own, but equally you can design them using a piece of software that help you to spread out your time over several days and weeks. Okay, the past exam paper questions and practice those is really important. And the reason why practicing exams is so important is because it's going to be a version of what you do in the real exams. So choosing past exam papers that are focusing on the questions that you find harder, okay, is it obviously important? As it says there, spend 20 minutes revising what you needed to know. Again, those 20-minute bursts are very important. Do the questions under time conditions, so you're practicing with the right amount of time. You can mark your own answers, okay, particularly at GCSE, Key Stage 4 and A-level or Key Stage 5, where you can find the mark schemes either from your teachers, okay, or from the internet. And obviously handing in extra copies of exam questions, and say, please, sir, miss, would you mind marking this for me? I've done this extra question. You know, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna be more than glad to mark that for you and give you some feedback. But you can also kind of do that feedback yourself at times. And actually, that marking your own work is a very good way of you kind of reflecting on where am I losing some marks for perhaps saying things in a slightly wrong way. Right, flashcards, okay, is the next area to focus on. So flashcards, not just simply kind of writing down our notes on little cards. That isn't very effective. But what is effective is turning flashcards into quiz cards. Quiz cards with a set of questions on one side and the answers on the back. Now, the example on this slide, okay, is just one question, but actually it makes more sense to write down a few questions, pack it with questions on one side and answers on the back, so that obviously you're using fewer cards. Obviously, focus on the questions and answers that you're not yet sure about, they're not yet stuck in your head. And by quizzing yourself or getting someone else to do that, it can make it far more active, and revision has to be active. Just reading through your notes will allow you to take in about 10% of what you read, but being very active with your revision, practice exam questions and quizzing yourself or getting other people to quiz you is far more effective and will lead to a more successful use of your revision time. When you're doing your flashcard quiz questions, remember to keep shuffling the order just in case you remember the answer to the first couple of questions, even though you don't necessarily know what the question was. Repeat it several times until the answer is stuck in your head over several days, with perhaps a day or two's gap in between. And once a set of quiz questions on a card are in your head, take that card out of the pack and just focus on the ones that you don't yet know. You can always bring it back in later just to double check that you haven't forgotten that. There's no point you going over quiz questions that you already know are definitely in your head now. Okay, so turn the knowledge into images. Okay, it's another quick thing you can do. So our brains remember information in images far more easily than a large amount of text. So can you turn it into some kind of visual code that might not mean anything to anyone else, but does to you? This is basically coding it and your brain decoding it when you're revising. It makes you think about how to simplify things to make things easier to learn. So an example for you then. So for example, the European heatwave of 2003 caused 10 billion pounds worth of damage to farming. That could be simplified by this little visual here. And all these images I've just found free on the internet, and I've just combined it into a little visual. It's going to be easy for my brain to remember that Europe map with money lying on top of it, a flame to represent the heat wave, and a 10 billion just written in the very simplest format. Sometimes having lots of visuals can be a very, very useful way of revising, and you could even put these onto flashcards and ask yourself, what does each one of these represent or symbolize? It's to turn knowledge into acronyms. So other than images, another way is, can I shorten it into fewer words? And an acronym is a really good way of doing that. So as an example for this, one that is used in geography is RCCCP, which isn't on its own a word or anything, but it is a little code to remind us about what air does when it rises. And if our brain is only remembering 5 letters rather than that whole paragraph, it's going to be easier to remember it in the exam. Mistakes lists. So keeping track of what mistakes we've made, okay, all the way through, our exercise books and folders, making a list of those mistakes when we are revising. What was that mistake, and why do I keep making that mistake? It's a really useful activity because it's important that we learn from our mistakes so that we get better over time. Otherwise, we run the risk of making the same mistakes in the real exams as we did back in class or in practice exam questions. So an example of this is this table here, where you might draw yourself a grid, have the date, the topic area, what mistake was made, and then once that mistake is removed and you can remember the correct answer, tick it off, and obviously work your way through that mistakes list until that list gets shorter and shorter. You can even think about how to focus your revision on these mistakes, making sure the things that are mistakes you made in the past are the things that you're trying to remember not to make in the future. Right, so in summary, we talked about 7 strategies just now. First thing is make sure you have everything you need. Okay, you're prepared in advance. You know what exam boards you do. You know what the exams or assessments are on, or tests at the end of a topic, okay, are about, and you know what kind of questions will come up. Plan your time. Okay, doing it all the night before won't help you. We learn over quite a long period of time, so it's about learning things a few days later, going over that again, perhaps in a different format, different way, so it sticks. We have to be have to learn something 3 times for it to really stick in our heads. Practice past exam questions and predict other possibilities. So obviously there are exam questions out there, but also think, well, what other questions could come up that haven't come up before that examiners might design this time around? Flashcard quizzing, the images, so turning text into images or turning text into acronyms, and then finally making mistakes lists so you've got one place to go to for all those main mistakes. Thank you.